Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're focusing on a really key area, organizational resilience. And to help us all get a proper handle on it, we're going straight to the source, the DRI International Glossary for Resilience.
That's right. We'll be unpacking some core terms, specifically looking at clauses C, D, and E today.
Think of this as your focused session, our mission. Simple, give you a really clear understanding of these key terms.
Yeah, cutting through any potential confusion. These definitions aren't just pulled out of thin air either.
No, absolutely not. This DRI glossary is, well, it's a compilation. DRI acts as an arbiter, really. They've curated these best-in-class definitions already out there in English, often from big names like BCI or DRJ.
And that's crucial. It represents a kind of industry consensus. And DRI themselves stress how important clear definitions are.
Right, because ambiguity, especially when things are critical, that's just problematic.
Exactly. Misunderstandings can really hinder response. So clarity is what we're aiming for.
Okay then, let's dive right in. We'll kick off with Clause C, and the first term is call tree.
Okay, call tree. The definition, drawing from BCI and DRJ, describes it as basically a document, often graphical.
Like a flowchart.
Sort of, yeah.
Oh.
It depicts the calling responsibilities and, crucially, the order for contacting stakeholders in an emergency.
Stakeholders being management, employees.
Everyone. Management, employees, customers, vendors, the whole list.
Okay, so it's that cascading contact list for when things go sideways. Seems pretty straightforward, but what's the deeper relevance?
Well, think about the initial chaos of a crisis. It's easy for things to get missed, right?
Sure.
A call tree provides that essential structure. It dictates the flow, avoids people calling the same person twice, or worse, missing someone vital.
Prevents wasted effort and ensures coverage.
Exactly. But, and this is a big but, they have to be kept up to date. An old call tree is, well, useless.
Good point. Contact details change constantly.
And how they mesh with modern mass notification systems is another interesting angle these days.
Right, integrating the old and the new. Okay, next in Clause C, capacity. This definition comes from UNDRR.
Yes, the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction. They define capacity as the combination of strengths, attributes, and resources.
Resources, okay.
Within a community or society or an organization that lets them achieve agreed goals. It's quite broad.
It sounds like it covers more than just, physical stuff.
Oh, absolutely. UNDR points to infrastructure, sure, physical means too, but also things like institutions, societal coping abilities.
Coping abilities.
Yeah, and the human side. Knowledge, skills, even collective things like social relationships, leadership, management. The glossary notes, it's often used interchangeably with capability.
So it's about your inherent strengths, not just tangible assets. And I see capacity assessment mentioned.
That's the process, yeah. Reviewing your capacity against what you want to achieve, identifying the gaps.
Right.
But what's really interesting is that it's not just about spotting weaknesses. It's also about recognizing and leveraging the strengths you already have for resilience.
Like finding hidden potential within the team.
Exactly. Maybe your logistics team's problem-solving skills could be used differently in a crisis,
That's a great way to frame it. Okay, next, change management. The source here is FIEC.
Right, the Federal Financial Institutions Examination Council. They define change management as those broad processes for managing organizational change.
Covering a whole life cycle.
Pretty much. Planning, oversight or governance, project management, testing, and finally, implementation.
Okay, seems straightforward for general business, but how does it directly connect to resilience?
Well, resilience isn't static, is it? Organizations change all the time. New tech, new processes, new people.
True.
Effective change management ensures your resilience measures keep pace, that they stay relevant and properly integrated.
Ah, so your resilience planning doesn't get left behind when the organization evolves.
Precisely. You roll out a new system, you need to make sure it's baked into your DR plans, otherwise you've just created a new potential weak spot. Resilience implications need to be part of the change process.
Makes sense. Keep it all aligned. Yep. Okay, moving on to checklist. Dual definition here from BCI-DRJ.
Yeah, first part. It's a tool to remind you about tasks, validate completion, check resource availability, and also report on recovery status.
One second.
Much simpler. A list of items to be checked or consulted.
Simple, yes, but incredibly powerful in a crisis, I'd imagine.
Absolutely. When pressure's high, things get missed. Even by experienced people, checklists are like cognitive safety nets.
Ensuring critical steps aren't overlooked.
Exactly. Basic, but their impact on preventing mistakes during a recovery is huge.
Definitely. Okay, next term brings in a specific role. Chief Information Officer, CIO. Definition from CNSSI 4009.
Right, Committee on National Security Systems Instruction. So the CIO's responsibilities, according to this, advising on acquiring and managing IT systems consistent with laws, priorities.
Okay, standard CIO stuff.
Developing and maintaining that integrated IT architecture, promoting efficient design and operation of information management processes, includes improving workflows, too.
So really ensuring the IT side supports the mission and follows the rules. How does that directly bolster resilience?
Well, a well-architected, well-managed IT environment is inherently more resilient, isn't it?
True. Less likely to fall over.
And easier to recover if it does. The CIO's strategic leadership in IT creates that stable foundation. The glossary also notes the term might be used lower down for similar security roles.
Underscores the need for that IT leadership across the board. Okay, next is civil emergency, BCIDRJ definition.
They define this as an event or situation threatening serious damage.
Damage too.
Human welfare in a place, the environment, or the security of that place itself.
Pretty broad. Covers a lot of ground. Why include such a general term?
It helps frame the kinds of severe situations that resilience efforts aim to address. The focus is on that major impact on people and safety. It sets the scene for why resilience is needed.
Got it. Sets the context. Okay, shifting gears to technology. Cloud computing.
Yeah.
CNSSI 4009 again.
They describe it as that model providing on-demand network access to a shared pool of configurable computing resources.
Networks, servers, storage.
Applications, services, the works. The key things are rapid provisioning and release with minimal management effort or provider interaction.
Cloud is everywhere now. What are the resilience implications? Seems like a double-edged sword.
You've absolutely hit the nail on the head. It can boost resilience, built-in redundancy, scalability, geographic diversity. Great for local disruptions, but you're reliant on that external provider. An outage or security issue there can hit you hard. So managing that dependency is crucial in your planning. Vendor due diligence becomes critical.
Definitely need to factor that in. Okay, next up is cold site, BCIDRJ definition.
A cold site, they say, is an alternate facility. It has the basic environmentals, power, cooling, space.
But no tech.
Right. No pre-installed computer hardware, comms equipment, etc. That all has to be brought in and set up at the time of disaster.
So basic infrastructure readiness. Why choose a cold site?
Usually cost. It's cheaper to maintain than a site with active systems, like a warm or hot site.
Makes sense.
It's an option if you can tolerate a longer recovery time or if budgets are tight. A trade-off.
Cost versus speed. Got it. Next term. Command center. BCIDRJ again. They define the command center as the location local to the event, but outside the immediate blast zone, so to speak.
Right, safe distance.
Where the tactical response, recovery, and restoration activities are managed. And they note multiple command centers might report to a single emergency operations center in bigger events.
So this is the operational hub for the immediate on-the-ground response.
Exactly. Resource allocation, team coordination, tactical decisions, it all happens there. Close to the action, but safe enough to operate. Crucial for coordination. Next, a core security concept, confidentiality. Definition from IPE.
IPE defines confidentiality simply as the property, the data or information is not made available or disclosed to unauthorized persons or processes.
Protecting sensitive info. How does this tie into resilience beyond just general good practice?
Well, think about managing sensitive data during or after a disruption. A breach then adds a whole new layer of crisis, doesn't it?
Reputational damage, legal issues.
Exactly. It can severely hamper recovery and destroy trust. So protecting confidentiality has to be baked into your resilience and recovery plans. It's non-negotiable.
Good point. It's integral. Okay, moving to contingency plan, BCIDRJ.
They define this as a plan used by an organization or even a specific business unit to respond to a specific systems failure or disruption.
So more focused than a big business continuity plan, like a plan for if this specific server fails.
Exactly. A BCP is the overarching strategy. A contingency plan drills down into the what-ifs for particular scenarios, key supplier unavailable, critical application outage, that sort of thing.
More granular. And that leads logically to contingency planning.
Right.
Also, BCIDRJ.
Right. Contingency planning is the process of developing those arrangements and procedures in advance. It's the proactive work to prepare for those undesired events that could impact the organization.
The prep work that creates the plans. Okay. Next is continual improvement. Definition from NFPA 1600.
NFPA 1600, that's the standard on disaster emergency management and business continuity programs. They define continual improvement as a recurring process.
Occurring.
Yeah, ongoing, enhancing the management program to get better overall performance in line with the organization's policy, goals, objectives.
So resilience isn't a set it and forget it thing?
Definitely not. Threats change, the business changes. You need to constantly review, learn, adapt, and improve your resilience posture. It's a cycle.
Always refining.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next term is just continuity. Definition from ACES.
ACES defines continuity as the strategic and tactical capability, and importantly, it has to be pre-approved by management.
Management buy-in, okay.
That lets an organization plan for and respond to events so it can continue operations at an acceptable predefined level. The glossary adds that ACES uses it broadly for operational and business continuity.
So strategy plus tactics, management approval, keeping things running acceptably, covers a lot.
It emphasizes that proactive planning and top-level support needed for sustained operations during trouble.
And there's a role for this, continuity manager, defined by FCD1.
Federal Continuity Directive 1. This role is the senior continuity planner. They manage the day-to-day continuity program, represent their department on continuity groups, and report up to the continuity coordinator.
So the person really in the weeds, making sure the program runs daily.
Yeah, they're key to the ongoing maintenance and effectiveness of the whole continuity effort.
Got it. Now, broadening out to government. Continuity of government, COG, also FCD1.
FCD1 defines COG as a coordinated effort within government branches to ensure national essential functions, the really vital stuff.
Like national security function.
Exactly. Ensuring those continue during a catastrophic emergency. And it notes this can apply to state and local government, too.
So ensuring the core functions of the nation or state survive extreme events.
That's the essence of it. Maintaining stability and essential services during the worst-case scenarios.
And related to that is the Continuity of Operations Plan, or COOP plan, defined by NIST SP 834.
Right, NIST. They describe a COOP plan as that predetermined set of instructions saying how mission-essential functions will be sustained. And they give specific times.
Timelines.
Yes, within 12 hours of an event and for up to 30 days before you get back to normal operations.
It's a very specific time frame for keeping the absolute essentials running.
Exactly. It's tightly focused on sustaining only the most critical functions within those defined recovery windows.
Okay, back to IT. Continuous availability. Definition from ITIL.
ITIL, the IT Infrastructure Library. Simple definition, a continuously available IT service.
The ideal state, basically. No downtime for users.
That's the goal, especially for critical services.
And building on that, continuous operations, also ITIL, 2 parts here.
First part, the ability of an organization to perform its processes without interruption.
The ideal game.
Second part, it's also a means of managing risk, ensuring business objectives are met, or ensuring processes are followed correctly.
So it's both the outcome uninterrupted flow and the strategies you use to achieve that outcome.
Nicely put. Both the state and the methods to maintain it.
Okay, next term is control. Definition from ISACA.
ISACA defines a control as the means of managing risk. It's a broad category that records policies, procedures, guidelines, practices, organizational structure,
Examples?
policies, procedures, specific roles, RAID for disk protection, even physical things like door locks. It notes they're sometimes called countermeasures or safeguards. And it can also mean managing how IT assets are used.
So controls are all the different levers an organization pulls to reduce risk and keep things stable, physical, or digital.
Yes, the specific mechanisms put in place to mitigate threats and vulnerabilities.
Got it. Okay, up to the leadership level now.
Yeah.
Corporate governance, BCIDRJ definition.
BCIDRJ describe corporate governance as the system, the processes by which directors and officers carry out their legal, moral, and regulatory accountabilities and responsibilities.
The framework for responsible leadership. How does this underpin resilience?
It's absolutely fundamental. Good governance sets the tone at the top. It ensures resilience is treated as strategic, that resources are allocated, and that there's clear accountability.
So leadership commitment driven by governance.
Exactly. Without that, resilience efforts often lack real teeth.
Makes sense. Next, corrective action. Definition from ISO 22301.
The business continuity standard, yes. It defines corrective action as the action taken to eliminate the cause of a nonconformity, and crucially, to prevent it from happening again.
So not just fixing the symptom, but addressing the root cause to stop recurrence.
Precisely. It's about learning from incidents or near misses and actually making changes to prevent them in the future, a key part of that continual improvement cycle.
Right, learning and adapting. Next, the money angle. Cost-benefit analysis. BCI-DRJ.
They describe this as a process done after your BIA and risk assessment usually that helps you financially evaluate different strategic BCM options.
Weighing the cost against the benefit.
Exactly, balancing the cost of implementing an option against the perceived savings, like avoiding losses from downtime.
Helps you make informed investment decisions for resilience.
That's the goal. Justify the spend, prioritize efforts based on potential return or loss avoidance.
Okay, next term. Crisis. BCI-DRJ definition. Sounds serious.
It is. They define it as a critical event which, if not handled right, could dramatically impact profitability, reputation, or the ability to operate. Or an occurrence or perception that threatens operations, staff, shareholder value, stakeholders, brand, reputation, trust, or strategic goals.
Wow, that covers a huge range of potential negative impacts. Perception, too.
Yes, a crisis is high stakes. It demands careful, coordinated management to minimize damage across the board.
Which leads us neatly to crisis management, also BCI-DRJ.
They define crisis management as the overall coordination of the organization's response to a crisis, done effectively, timely, with the goal of avoiding or minimizing damage to, well, all those things we just listed: profitability, reputation, operations.
The strategic and tactical handling of that critical event.
Exactly. Having the plans, the teams, the processes ready to go before the crisis hits.
And speaking of teams, crisis management team, CMT, BCI-DRJ again.
The CMT is that group responsible for developing and implementing the comprehensive crisis response plan. It's made up of decision makers, people trained in incident management.
The designated command crew for a crisis.
That's a good way to put it. They have the authority and skills to manage the situation. The glossary notes a slight UK nuance on crisis traditionally, but says the term's use is broadening.
Okay, the empowered response team. Next, critical infrastructure, DCI-DRJ.
They define this as those physical assets whose incapacity or destruction would have a debilitating impact.
Debilitating impact on.
The economic or physical security of the organization, community, nation, etc. It also mentions a similar term from FCD1, critical asset, meaning strategically important assets.
Identifying and protecting these core assets seems absolutely fundamental to resilience.
It has to be. You need to know what's truly critical to prioritize protection and recovery efforts. If these go down, the impact is severe.
Definitely. Okay. A modern menace next, cyber attack. Definition from FFIEC.
FFIEC defines it as an attempt to damage, disrupt, or gain unauthorized access to a computer system or network, targeting cyberspace use.
With what intent?
To disrupt, disable, destroy, maliciously control systems, destroy data integrity, or steal controlled information.
A pretty grim list of potential outcomes.
It highlights the malicious intent and the wide range of damage these attacks can cause across an organization's digital footprint.
Which brings us directly to CyberResilience. This one's from DRI itself.
Yes, DRI defines CyberResilience as the entity's ability to continuously deliver products and services despite adverse cyber events.
So not just stopping attacks, but functioning even if one gets through.
Exactly. It involves actively preparing, planning, reacting, responding, recovering, but also adapting to changing threats, training people, and constantly exercising those response and recovery plans.
A whole life cycle approach to cyber threats.
Precisely. Preparation, response, recovery, adaptation. Continuous.
And rounding out Clause C, cybersecurity. Definition from CNSSI 4009.
They define cybersecurity as the prevention of damage to, unauthorized use of, exploitation of, and the restoration of electronic information and systems and their data.
With the goal being?
Strengthening confidentiality, integrity, and availability. The classic CIA triad.
So cybersecurity provides the foundational protection.
Exactly. It's the practices and tech used to protect digital assets, which is a cornerstone of building that broader cyber resilience.
Okay, deep breath.
Yeah.
We've made it through Clause C. A lot of foundational stuff there. Let's take a beat, then jump into Clause D, starting with damage assessment. NFPA 1600 definition.
Right. NFPA 1600 defines damage assessment as an appraisal or determination of the effects of an incident.
Effects on what specifically?
On humans, physical structures, operations, economic characteristics, and the environment. A comprehensive look.
So, figuring out the full extent of the impact after something happens. Why is this so critical?
Because you can't effectively guide recovery without knowing what you're recovering from.
Makes sense.
A thorough assessment tells you what the critical needs are, helps you prioritize resources, tailor the response. Without it, you're flying blind, potentially wasting effort.
Got it. Need that clear picture first. Okay, next is data integrity. FIEC definition?
FFIEC defines this as the property that data hasn't been destroyed or corrupted in an unauthorized way. It also means maintaining and assuring accuracy and consistency over its whole life cycle.
So keeping data accurate and reliable. Crucial for decision-making, especially after a disruption.
Absolutely. If your data is corrupted or wrong, it severely hampers recovery and can lead to more problems down the line. It's foundational for trust in your systems.
Right. Next, a technique for protecting data. Data mirroring. BCIDRJ.
They describe data mirroring as a process where critical data is replicated, essentially copied in real time to another device.
Like an instant backup on a separate system.
Pretty much. The big benefit is high availability and super fast recovery. If the main storage fails, the mirror takes over almost instantly, minimizes downtime and data loss.
Very useful for critical systems that can't afford to be down.
Exactly.
Next up, data recovery. BCIDRJ again.
This is defined as the restoration of computer files from backup media. The aim is to get programs and production data back to the state they were in at the time of the last good backup.
So pulling data back from backups after it's lost, a core part of ITDR.
Absolutely essential. You need this process to restore services after any kind of data loss event, hardware failure, cyber attack, whatever it might be.
Okay. Next term involves a formal step. Declaration. BCIDRJ definition.
A declaration is that formal announcement made by someone with pre-authorized power.
Announcing what?
That a disaster or severe outage is predicted or has actually occurred. And, importantly, this triggers prearranged actions like activating your recovery plan or moving to an alternate site.
So it's the official go signal for the response plan.
Yes, the formal initiation based on assessment. A key decision point.
Got it. Next is delegation of authority, defined by FCD1.
FCD1 describes this as identifying by position, not necessarily name who has the authority to make policy and other key decisions at different levels.
And this matters when?
When normal channels of command are disrupted, these predetermined delegations kick in automatically then, and they lapse when normal authority is restored.
Ensures decision-making doesn't grind to a halt if leaders are unavailable.
Precisely. A clear line of succession for authority, ensuring people are empowered to act when needed.
Okay. Next, a common cyber threat. Denial of service. DOS CNSSI 4009.
They define DOS as preventing authorized access to resources or delaying time-critical operations, and they note time-critical varies depending on the service.
So basically flooding a system to make it unavailable.
That's the common method, yes. Overwhelm the target with traffic or exploit a vulnerability to disrupt service for legitimate users.
Got it. Next term looks at links. Dependency. BCIDRJ.
Simply defined as the reliance or interaction of one activity or process upon another.
Understanding these seems absolutely vital, right? Because one failure can cascade.
Huge implications. Mapping dependencies helps you see potential choke points, understand the ripple effects of a disruption. If system A depends on system B and B goes down,
Then A's in trouble too.
exactly. You need that knowledge to build robust mitigation and recovery plans that account for those connections.
Makes perfect sense. Next term, devolution. From FCD1. Sounds governmental.
It is, primarily. FCD1 defines it as transferring statutory authority and responsibility from an organization's primary staff and facilities to other staff at alternate locations.
Why?
To sustain essential functions when the primary setup is knocked out.
So a planned handover to keep critical government functions running from backup locations if needed.
That's it, exactly. A key strategy for governmental continuity in major emergencies.
And related is the Devolution Emergency Response Group, DER, also FCD1.
The DERG is the team. Personnel stationed at a geographically dispersed location, not the primary one identified to continue performing those essential functions under devolution.
The designated team at the backup site ready to take over.
Correct. They're the ones who execute the devolution plan from those alternate locations.
Okay. Next up, the big one. Disaster, multi-part definition from BCIDRJ.
They define it a few ways. One, a sudden, unplanned, catastrophic event causing unacceptable damage or loss.
Okay, 2.
An event that compromises the organization's ability to provide critical functions for an unacceptable period.
And 3.
An event where management invokes their recovery plans.
So, severity, impact on critical functions, and triggering formal recovery all point to a major event.
Yes, emphasizes the scale and the need for a significant planned response.
Which leads to disaster recovery, Dr. BCIDRJ again.
They frame DR as the technical aspect of business continuity.
Focused on IT.
Primarily, yes. resources and activities to reestablish IT services, infrastructure, telecoms, systems, apps, data at an alternate site, then resumption and restoration back at a permanent site eventually.
So specifically, getting the tech back online after the disaster.
That's the core focus. Restoring the IT capabilities needed to support the business recovery.
And the plan for that is the Disaster Recovery Plan, defined by NIST SP 834.
NIST calls it a written plan for recovering one or more information systems at an alternate facility. Covers major hardware-software failure or destruction of facilities.
The documented roadmap for IT recovery at a secondary site.
Exactly, the step-by-step guide.
And the ongoing work to create and maintain that is Disaster Recovery Planning, BCIDRJ.
Yes, the activities associated with planning for the continuing availability and restoration of the IT infrastructure. The continuous process.
Okay, shifting perspective slightly. Disaster risk reduction. NDRR definition. More proactive.
Very much so. NDRR defines it as the concept and practice of reducing disaster risk through systematic efforts to analyze and manage the causes of disasters.
Wow.
Reduced exposure to hazards, lessening vulnerability, wise land and environment management, improved preparedness. It stresses risk is ongoing but reducible.
So trying to lessen the likelihood and impact before anything happens.
Exactly. A preventative, long-term approach, not just reactive.
Got it. Next combines concepts. Disaster Emergency Management from NFPA 1600 and BCIDRJ.
2 parts here. NFPA 1600 sees it as an ongoing process. Prevent, mitigate, prepare, respond, maintain continuity during, and recover from incidents threatening life, property, operations, environment. The whole life cycle.
And BCIDRJ add?
That it's a program implementing the mission, vision, goals, objectives, and management framework of the organization, making it integral.
A comprehensive, integrated approach across the whole incident life cycle tied into the organization's strategy.
That sums it up well. Holistic management of potential crises.
Okay, a simpler term next. Disruption. ACES definition.
ACES defines a disruption as an event, anticipated or not, that interrupts normal business, functions, operations, or processes. And they note, interestingly, it can be caused by positive or negative factors.
So any deviation from normal operations, whatever the cause.
Pretty much. Any interruption to business as usual.
Okay, back to cyber threats. Distributed denial of service, DDoS, CNSSI 4009.
This is described as a DOS technique using numerous hosts, often compromised machines, a botnet.
To do what?
To perform the attack, hit the target from many directions at once.
Making it much harder to block than a single-source DOS attack.
Exactly. The volume and distributed nature make defense and mitigation significantly more complex.
Nasty stuff. Okay, basic but important. Document. BCIDRJ definition.
Defined very broadly. Information and its supporting medium. Paper, magnetic, electronic, optical disk, image, anything that holds information.
Covers all the bases for where critical information might reside.
Yep. Underscores managing info in all its forms.
Next, measuring inactivity, downtime. BCI definition.
Simply, a period when something is not in operation. And they note outage is often used synonymously, especially for IT systems.
The key metric for impact. How long were things offline?
Exactly. Critical for measuring the severity and business impact of any disruption.
And wrapping up, Clause D, duty of care. BCIDRJ.
They define this as a corporate governance requirement. It's the obligation incumbent on officers.
Obligation to do what?
To take care of the organization's assets, protect them.
Which implicitly includes resilience measures, right?
Yeah.
Protecting against disruption is part of protecting assets.
Absolutely. It underscores leadership's responsibility for safeguarding the organization's viability and security, which includes being prepared.
Okay, Clause D navigated. Another dense but crucial section. Let's move into our final set, Clause E, starting with emergency. ACES definition.
ACES gives 2 parts. 1, an unexpected or impending situation that may cause injury, loss of life, property destruction, or disruption of normal business to such an extent it poses a threat.
And 2,
Sudden, urgent, usually unexpected occurrence or event requiring immediate action. They add that while often anticipated generally, the specifics are seldom foreseen.
key elements seem to be unexpectedness and the need for immediate action to mitigate harm.
Yes. It demands that rapid, decisive response to minimize the immediate negative impacts. Protect people, protect property.
Got it. Next, emergency management. BCIDRJ definition.
They define this primarily as the responsibility of governments and public authorities, complying with laws related to emergency response.
So focus on the public sector role.
Mostly, yes.
Yeah.
Coordinated by emergency management teams, though structures vary by country. It highlights the governmental role in large-scale community emergencies.
Okay, and the hub for that is the Emergency Operations Center, EOC, BCIDRJ.
The EOC is described as the physical and/or virtual location where strategic decisions are made, where all activities of an event, incident, or crisis are directed, coordinated, monitored, and they stress it's different from a command center.
Right, command center is tactical, on the ground. EOC is the strategic overall control hub.
That's the key distinction. The EOC provides the high-level direction for the entire response effort.
Makes sense. Next, the state of readiness. Emergency preparedness, BCIDRJ.
This is defined as the capability that enables an organization or community to respond to an emergency in a coordinated, timely, and effective manner.
Goal being
Preventing loss of life, minimizing injury, and property damage. It's about being ready before it happens.
having the plans, resources, training in place ahead of time.
Exactly. Proactively building the capacity for an effective response.
Okay. Next, Emergency Relocation Group, ERG, defined by FCD1.
FCD1 describes an ERG as staff assigned to continue performance of essential functions.
Where?
At an alternate location if their primary facilities are impacted or incapacitated.
Similar to the DIRG, but maybe broader than just government.
That seems right. While DIRG is specific to devolution, an EOR could be any organization's team designated to keep essential ops running from a backup site during an emergency.
Okay, the team for relocating essential functions. Next, the immediate actions. Emergency response, BCIDRJ.
Defined as the immediate reaction and response to an emergency, commonly focusing on ensuring life safety and reducing the severity of the incident right at the start.
The initial critical actions when it first hits. Life safety first.
Precisely. The first phase of managing the emergency itself.
And the plan for that is the Emergency Response Plan, BCIDRJ, with related terms from FCD1 noted.
BCDRJ call it a documented plan, usually addressing that immediate reaction and response. FCD1 has similar concepts: emergency plan for short duration threats and occupant emergency plan, or OEP.
OEP for.
Things like evacuation or sheltering in place procedures for localized events like fire, weather, power outages, safeguarding lives and property in the building.
So documented procedures for the immediate actions varying in scope.
Exactly. The structured guide for that initial critical phase.
And the teams doing this are the Emergency Response Team, IDRJ.
An AIR area is defined as qualified and authorized personnel who've been trained to provide immediate assistance.
The trained first responders within the organization.
Yes. Ready to act and provide support right away in an emergency.
Okay. Next, defining the organization itself. Enterprise. CNSSI 4009 definition.
They describe an enterprise as an organization with a defined mission goal and boundary. Uses IT systems to execute the mission, responsible for managing its own risks and performance. Covers all aspects: finance, HR, security, IT.
So the whole entity that needs to think about resilience across all its parts.
Yes, sets the scope for risk management and resilience for the entire organization.
And the holistic view of risk is Enterprise Risk Management, ERM, BCIDRJ.
ERM includes the methods and processes organizations use to manage risks and seize opportunities related to achieving objectives. It gives a framework for identifying, assessing, responding to, and monitoring risks.
Aiming to.
Protect and create value for stakeholders. It's a broad, strategic approach to all kinds of risk, including resilience-related ones.
Integrated risk management across the board. Okay. Next, communication flow. Escalation, DCIDRJ.
Defined as the process by which event-related information is communicated upwards through the organization's established chain of command.
Getting the right info to the right level of management quickly.
Precisely. Ensures awareness and enables timely decisions during an incident. Vital communication protocol.
Okay. Identifying core activities. Essential functions, FCD1 definition.
Defined as the critical activities performed by organizations, especially after a disruption of normal activities.
Figuring these out is fundamental to continuity planning, isn't it? What must keep going?
Absolutely core. You build your BCP and DR plans around ensuring these essential functions can continue.
Got it. Next, the basic utilities. Essential services, BCIDRJ.
These are defined as infrastructure services without which a building or area would be considered disabled.
Look.
Typically utilities. Water, gas, electricity, telecoms. Could also include standby power or environmental controls like HVAC. The basics needed to operate.
The foundational services needed for a facility to function.
Yes. Often a prerequisite for resuming other operations.
Okay. A key safety measure. Evacuation, ACIS definition.
Defined as the organized, phased, and supervised dispersal of people from dangerous or potentially dangerous areas.
Getting people out safely. Critical in many emergencies.
Absolutely. Well-rehearsed evacuation plans are crucial for life safety.
Next, a very broad term. Event. ISO 31000 definition.
The risk management standard defines an event simply as an occurrence or change of a particular set of circumstances.
Very general. Could be anything happening.
Yes. Foundational term in risk management. Covers incidents, disruptions, changes.
Anything. Okay. Addressing leadership continuity. Executive management succession plan. BCIDRJ.
This is described as a predetermined plan ensuring continuity of authority, decision-making, and communication if key executive management unexpectedly become incapacitated.
Having a plan B for leadership if the key players are out.
Vital for stability and direction, especially in a crisis. Keeps the ship steered.
Definitely. And finally, for Clause E exercise, NFPA 1600 definition plus lots of types listed.
Right. NFPA 1600 defines an exercise as an activity where the entity's plans is rehearsed, partly or wholly.
To achieve what?
To ensure the plan has the right info and gives the desired results when used for real. Then the glossary lists many types.
Like
Desktop exercises called pre-tests, DR exercises full-scale involving multiple agencies, functional exercises testing coordination centers, life safety drills like evacuations, notification tests, plan walkthroughs, tabletop exercises, lots of ways to test.
wow. Really highlights that you can't just write a plan. You have to test it, practice it in various ways.
Absolutely critical. Exercises validate plans, train teams, find the weaknesses, build confidence. They're indispensable for ensuring readiness.
Okay, we did it. We've worked our way through clauses C, D, and E of the DRI International Glossary. That was quite the deep dive.
It certainly was, and hopefully by getting a clearer understanding of these specific terms, you feel better equipped now to engage with concepts around organizational resilience.
And it's worth remembering, this glossary isn't just one viewpoint. It's a significant effort to standardize terminology, drawing from many recognized sources.
A shared language. Which brings us to a final thought for you to consider. How clear and consistent is the understanding of these terms within your own organization?
Good question.
Are there, perhaps, areas of ambiguity, differences in interpretation that could actually hinder an effective response when something happens?
That's definitely something to reflect on. And of course, what we covered is just a slice of the full glossary.
There's much more in there. We'd encourage you to explore it further. You can find it at www.gri.org.
Understanding this common language really is a vital step towards building a more resilient organization and ultimately a more resilient world. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.